Alright guys, time for today's training games. Got a game against VMH396 from Canada, who's rated 268. And she's a member of the Chess Bootcamp group. So, I've got the black pieces and we've started with e4. So let's play e5. So what are we going to be focusing on in this? Okay, haha, you Vienna game me, huh? You Vienna game me. Okay, let's see what we get. Now at this level the Vienna Gambit works very well. At higher levels you don't see the Vienna Gambit too often, and the reason is because d5 is better, simply better for black. Okay, so now, I've got a bishop looking at f7, but the king's knight hasn't come out yet to start its journey towards f7, so I'm not too worried about that. It's probably time to develop, so I'm going to do the same. Put my bishop here. I like to bring up my queen's knight as well and eye up that square, just in terms of a general plan. Why? That is a square in the centre of the board, okay, and it's not defended right now, so it's vacant. So I would love to stick a piece on there. That's the extent of my plan right now. Yes, I also want to castle my king. Yes, I also want to complete development. Okay. We've had a really, really good suggestion in the comments. Somebody saying, how about a video on kind of middle game plans using something like the puzzle format. If you pull up a random middle game layout or multiple middle games and just say, okay, this board playing with this colour, what should your plan be? Because puzzles don't do that. Okay, now she's moved her queen to e2, which is unorthodox. Okay, generally you don't want to move your queen until you've finished developing your minor pieces, for sure. So I'm going to castle my king. This is an unrated game. Obviously there's more than 1,000 points rating difference between us, but there's no real danger on the board right now. So my opponent also says that she tends to do better against bots and not so well against humans playing live because of nerves in the game. So what advice maybe could we offer for that kind of scenario? So we'll come to that. I'm conscious that she's got 3 pieces looking at d5. I'd love to be able to play d5. And if I played d5 now, it would be defended by knight and queen, which is not enough. So how about c6? c6 is a useful general purpose move, right? And we're looking at squares, we're looking at real estate, okay? It stops the bishop from coming to either of these 2 squares. It stops the knight from coming to either of these 2 squares, right? It also gives the queen 3 more options, okay? And it's all about options. Currently the queen has only got a couple of squares she could go to, but now she's got 3 more, right? Brand new ones. Make them green. They were already green. Okay, I'm counting attackers and defenders. 2 defenders on that, and 1 attacker. So, ooh! You might have missed the trick there. This pawn was undefended. So I'm going to move my rook across to e8 and defend that pawn. So one piece of advice is, obviously for nerves, rule number 1, never react. Never react. So my opponent's made a move. Okay, you've made a move. What's changed? So just using the checklist, right? Is my king safe? What's changed? Why did my opponent make that move, right? What's now defended that wasn't defended? What's now less defended that was defended, right? Every time a piece moves on the board, so for example, this pawn has just moved from here, where it was defending these 2 squares, and now it's moved to here, where it's now defending these 2 squares, okay? That's the simple fact, and you can get so much out of chess just by stating the facts of what's on the board. Okay. So now I'm thinking, right? One thing that I noticed from this move is, okay, the pawn has moved from a dark square onto a light square. Okay. Now my opponent has her bishop, a light squared bishop now, in front of her pawn chain. Now that's not necessarily an issue, but the bishop can't go here. King takes. Can't go here because pawn takes. Here because pawn takes, right? Can't go here because pawn, or here because pawn. Now, what that means is this bishop only has 2 squares. So I'm now thinking tactically, I'm going to play a5, right? And this is like a 3-move tactic idea. My idea is, I want to push b5, right? Then attacking that square. And that means I know that the bishop would only have 1 square to go to, has to retreat to b3. So the point of a5 is that if I pushed b5, attack the bishop, bishop moves back, then a5, and I trap the bishop. Okay, now, so here's where the checklist comes in, right? Why did my opponent make that move? Okay, well, do I want control of b4? No. Why would I want control of b4? That doesn't make sense, okay? So she's missed the pattern here, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and do this just to show. It's all unrated game anyway, so. And now possibly the penny might drop, right? Now she'll think, oh, you know, what squares have I? I've only got that. And then the point of a5 will become clear, okay? Now, she might be better off maybe even capturing on f7 or capturing on here, making me recapture here, right? We'll create 2 pawn islands, but you know, material will be lost anyway. Okay. So by now, she'll have worked out the bishop is doomed. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. So do I want to capture the bishop or do I want to capture the knight? In general, I want to capture bishop. Plus, it's going to mess up her pawns when she recaptures here. Okay. Could have got the knight with. See what I did there? Oh, see what I didn't do? I didn't do my own checklist. The knight moved there, and I'm thinking, what's she done? She's put a knight, and then my only thought was, oh look, I have a choice of material to capture, and I went ahead and captured that, and lost my knight. Okay, so I had a doubled pawn there, so I'm gonna get rid of that pawn, eliminate it, and she can now recapture with one of 3 pieces. Okay, this is great. This is great. So now we've got much less of an imbalanced game. Okay, so she's recaptured with a knight. Now, so what I immediately see is the knight's moved to here, and now it means that she's got 2 pieces attacking my pawn on e5. My pawn on e5 is defended only once. So I'm going to push d6. My knight is pinned. That is a fact. So that's an issue. That means I can't move my knight. Otherwise my queen will be captured. And that would make me cry. So, what I'm going to do is I'm thinking knight d7. Right? When you've got a knight on its natural square, one of these 2 squares, and your other knight is still at home, then you have the option of moving to the 7th rank or the 2nd rank in the case of white and pair up your knights. So defending that knight means that my queen would be free to develop, and I think that looks like a very good square. Okay, and my knight would be defended by my other knight. I could move my queen now, but then if Vanessa captures my knight, I can only recapture with my g-pawn, and that would expose my king, and we don't want that. So I'm thinking knight here and queen here. Now, why this square? Well, it's looking at a pawn there. The pawn is actually currently defended. But more than that, it's on the diagonal that the king is on. That means that that pawn would be pinned in an absolute pin, which means that it cannot legally move, because you can't make a move that puts your king in check in chess. It's not allowed. Das ist verboten, as they say in Germany. Another idea is similar, is to put my bishop here. Right now, this bishop's absolutely bloody useless, right? It's now got a knight. It's looking at the back of the horse's head. That's pointless. So it's only got a couple of squares. One of these squares puts it on a diagonal that's got lots of traffic on it, okay? But this square here is better. One reason is that the rook's defending it, okay? Now it does actually block the defense of that pawn, has to be said, but it pins the knight, means this knight can't move, otherwise queenie's gone. Okay, so, yeah, someone was asking about plans. I haven't got a plan right now. We're in the middle game, pretty much. Yeah, both kings are castled. My opponent's got all of her pieces out on the board. I just have to develop my bishop and my queen, and they've got a couple of quite natural squares here. Both of them, because they're diagonal moving pieces, want to be pointing. They want to be roughly in this area of the board, right? Because diagonally, that puts them in line with the danger area, which is where your opponent's king is. So she wants her remaining bishop, ideally, somewhere around here. Okay? Somewhere around here, looking towards my king. Right, that's the general plan. Now, this bishop here is not doing a fat lot. Okay, so let's move the bishop there now. So, 1,000 points rating difference is meaningless if you blunder pieces. Right? Everyone can blunder. What is the meaning of this? She's attacking an undefended pawn. And if she takes that pawn as well, she's attacking my rook, which is not too bad. So how about rook e6? Solves my problem of the pawn being undefended. Also gives me options of a rook lift later on. Okay? A lot of beginners fail to appreciate the power of the rooks. Okay, knight is still pinned. Knight is actually defended 3 times. 4 times now. That's one well-defended horse. Okay, now, still want to develop my queen. Because my queen is a good attacking piece, and it also just makes sense to pin that pawn. All right. So I'm thinking about, what I'm doing right now is I'm lining up possibilities. Think a bit like, you're putting hooks in the stream to catch fish. Right? You're not going to catch a fish straight away, but you're preparing the idea. So, this bishop here has pinned that knight. Queen here will pin that pawn. And what that means is, that's 2 pieces that my opponent can't move. And that creates possibilities for me. It means, for example, that I might, come after this knight with my knight. That's just an idea. It means, for example, I could put if my queen's here, I could capture that, right? Then if knight takes, I take her queen with an attack on the rook, and I've won myself a pawn, okay? That's just an idea. So a lot of the middle game is tactics first, really. You're saying, okay, what are the threats? What are the opportunities? Can I carve away at my opponent's position? But other than that, it's generally, I want to improve my position. I want to line up possibilities. I want to gain control of the board. Okay, now the queen's moved. What does this mean? Okay, well, the queen is still defending this pawn. But it's the only defender of that pawn. Okay. Now I can't capture the pawn with my knight, as we've established, because the queenie falls. Okay, so I'm thinking queen here still, but again, this is going back to the nerves thing, we don't react. Don't react. Okay, queen's moved there. What does it mean? So until you've finished explaining exactly what's changed on the board, don't do anything. Don't even, think about what you're going to do next. Because what you're going to do next depends on what does the board say. We have to read the runes of the board. So, is my king safe? Yes. Because bishop can take there, but I've got many, many, many pieces that can recapture. That's not a problem. Okay, what just changed? Well, the queen moved from here to here. That means the queen is defending this knight, so the knight is defended twice. Okay, this is really, really simple stuff. The queen is defending that pawn which she was defending anyway. The knight is now unpinned. This is important. I think that's more or less it. Okay, the knight's defended 3 times. The queen is still defending the knight. Okay, that means that idea of capturing this pawn and winning a pawn is no longer a good idea. So I'm going to go ahead and just develop my queen anyway. I'm happy with my safety down there. Queen's lined up with king, right, which is just a general plus. And now actually my knight is free to move because the queen finally has vacated d8. Don't know where my knight's going to move. This could be an idea. Because my knight's overprotected here, right? Still defended 3 times currently. I could move this knight away and he's still got plenty of defense. So bishop takes, rook takes, and that actually makes my rook better. So generally think, improve your position, improve your pieces in the middle game. Improve, improve, improve. Right? Whenever you think about your candidate moves, say, if I do this, what's my opponent going to do? Right? If they play the best moves that they've got, does that improve their position relative to mine, or does it improve my position more? Okay. So she's now pushed b3. Maybe unnecessary. Because, yes, the pawn was defended, but only by the knight. Okay. Another option could have been rook b1. Would have achieved, the defense of the pawn. But now the pawn is defended twice by its neighbouring pawns. And what I'm thinking is, why did my opponent make that move? Maybe c4 is coming. And if c4 comes, does that make my bishop bad? So one thought that crossed my mind was to swap this bishop off for the knight if this bishop is about to become a bad bishop. However, I'm also thinking that to put my bishop on here and on this diagonal is not a bad thing. And the reason is because we've got something else, the other major feature of the middle game, which is pawn breaks. Now, my main pawn break is clearly d5. Right? So this pawn can't move forwards. These pawns don't want to move forwards. So I've got these 2 pawns that could advance up the board. So d5 is attacked once, twice by white. But it's defended once, twice by my pieces. Okay? So I'm going to put my bishop here. So then if and when I push d5, takes, right? I've now improved my c-pawn. My c-pawn has now been promoted to a d-pawn, to a central pawn, and I have a 2-on-1 pawn majority in the middle of the board. And that's a good thing. Still happy here. The home front is safe. She's got a check, but rook takes. She's got a check, pawn takes. So now, yeah, we are in this middle game idea. And now my thoughts are around the d5 pawn break. One question is, do I want to do anything with my rook before I advance, right? So the timing of pawn breaks and the timing of attacks, very, very important. It becomes increasingly important as you improve. So there, takes, and then I'm threatening this, look. Then I'm threatening a pawn fork, which would be very nasty. So that would be forcing. That means that my opponent's got to do something. And indeed, here comes c4, and that changes stuff. Yeah? That changes stuff. And the reason is because now d5 is controlled once, twice, and 3 times. Because the queen's like lining up in defense. Okay? So if I do that, pawn takes, I take, she takes, knight takes. So that's 3 attackers. So pawn takes, okay, so there, she takes and that pawn's gone. I take and that pawn's gone. She takes again. I've got 3 defenders, right? 1, 2, 3. 3 attackers, 3 defenders means that there is actually no advantage gained by the attacking side to initiate the exchange, okay? Let's work it through again. Pawn takes, pawn takes, pawn takes, bishop takes. So, one idea would be like to put my rook here and move this knight, but I'm disinclined to do that because actually my rook's still defending that. So is there something cool I could do with my knight? Is there? This knight is not in a great position, right? Knights are short range attacking pieces, and this guy is a long way from my opponent's king. So I'm thinking about putting that there, but then if knight takes, queen takes, I think that's better for white, because look, it's just opened things up for that rook. She got no d-pawn. I don't want to encourage that knight to move. So I am going to move my knight, but I'm going to try and maneuver it around here or something like that. Or at least here. I mean, that's a really nice square for a knight. Okay? If you think about it, from here, it's very different to there. From here, it's only 1 jump away from g2. And g2 is a serious action square, potentially. Right? My bishop is looking at g2, for example. And now I can move my rook across here. And then d5 has 1, 2, 3, 4 defenders. See? Big difference. Now, if I'd have pushed d5 before, we might have had a flurry of exchanges, and white might have come out better. Now if I do it, so she's attacking my queen. Okay? Now, really important. Especially when a big piece is being attacked, okay? Rule number 1, don't panic. Okay? As a wise man once wrote, the great Douglas Adams. Don't panic. My queen is under attack. Okay. Why did my opponent make that move? My opponent is attacking my queen. Okay? And so she's given up ideas of that knight. Fair enough. So what options do I have? Take the bishop. No. Can't move there, can't move there, can't move there. That is a very bad square indeed. The queen's just out of ideas there. Can't move back here because the bishop takes me anyway, which leaves a choice of 2. So if I move the queen here, does she have ideas? If I move the queen here, is that better or worse? I'm just going to stick it here. There's no massive difference between those two. Okay, we're down to 6 minutes now. You see the huge importance of saying, okay, what are all my options? And the difference I see, this is always like a growth area for players. What are all of my options? I mean, you could sit and write them down, and then you could cross them out as you go. Okay, if you're giving yourself enough time in your games, which you absolutely should be doing. But I see really good players playing moves that I wouldn't consider. Right at the beginner level, moves are often played in reaction, which you shouldn't do. As you get better, you start considering more possibilities. And as you get better still, you get even more possibilities, and things like sacrifices become more frequent. When you go, okay, because a beginner would go, right, well, obviously one option is, for example, queen takes bishop, right? And then you go, nah, like I did, right? But a master chess player might go, okay, if queen takes bishop and, there are 3 options to recapture, blah, 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 actually that, and might realise that there's a winning attack in the tubes. Okay, so now, what just changed? Well, the queen moved from f3 to g3. That means the queen undefended this pawn. That means that this pawn is actually not defended anymore. Okay? What's more, I have a piece looking at that pawn. So, did my opponent just hang a piece? Well, no. Well, yes. But if I take that, why did my opponent make that move? My opponent's got ideas. My opponent's thinking, queen takes g7 checkmate. Okay? However, I'm not freaking out. Okay? Don't panic, Mr. Mannering. Don't panic. Okay? Not freaking out. What are my options? King to h8. No good. Queen takes g7 is still checkmate. Alright. g6 is an idea. Attacking the knight, but not really attacking the knight because the pawn is actually pinned. Right? Queen's on the g-file, king's on the g-file, g-pawn. Can he leave the g-file? Alright? But I also have this move, and that's what I'm going to play. So you remember, see, this knight's gone on a little journey. We could write a book about the story of the wandering knight. And now it's come to g6. And now it's become a very important knight. And now what this means is the threat of queen takes g7 checkmate is no longer there. But this now is an option. It wasn't an option on the previous move because of the checkmate threat. And that's why the first 2 rules of Chess Club are, is my king safe and is my king safe, right? Now I can capture here and actually comes with a fork. See? But before I do that, I'm looking at what the board will look like. So my finger is still firmly on the mouse button. I'm just checking that there's no horrible nasties that could happen, okay? And now I am attacking the queen and I'm attacking the rook. So, bishop. Get rooks and bishops mixed up because I'm not very smart. Okay, now my opponent has an issue. She's got to do something with her queen. Can't go there, 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 or there. So these dark squares are out. Because both of my knights are on light squares, which means they're controlling dark squares. Now I'm starting to think as well about things like this. Push c5 as a pawn break, which unleashes the devastating power of the light squared bishop. Which, by the way, can attack all the way from the other side of the board, because that's what bishops do. They're long range. Okay, so I'm pawn up at this point in time. We're both down to about 4 minutes on the clock. Oh, she says a mouse slip. What was the mouse slip? Ah, so I don't know when that was. Oh, that would be unfortunate. Mouse slips are a problem, and it makes a lot of sense. If you want to avoid mouse slips, then there's 2 ways to move your pieces if you're in using the browser, right? One is that you can pick up a piece and drag it somewhere else and drop it, right? The other is that you can click on the piece and then on your next move click on another square, right? And that's a lot safer. So, for example, if I want to do something like, rook takes rook or queen takes queen when you're moving 8 squares, I don't drag the piece because it's just too far for me to move my mouse while holding down the left button. So in that instance, I click and then click on the target. Okay, So if you want to eliminate mouse slips, that's a good way to do it. Now, I have an option. Okay, so what's happened? My opponent's moved the queen there. Why has she done that? Because it was under attack. Okay, so queen's now defending that. Do I want to capture the bishop? That's the big question. And the answer is, I'm not really scared of that bishop. Look, I've got these dark squared pawns controlling these squares. So that bishop is not very scary right now. I'm going to push c5. Okay, it defends the knight and it's lining up a potential attack against there. And you remember, I set this up ages ago, right? But I didn't force it. It's like, I'm going to put my bishop there because it's lined up with g2. And I'm going to sit and wait. And then we've had some tactical toing and froing, right? And then eventually the bishop's day dawns. And that's fine. Now I notice this, we have an undefended knight. Queen's defending these, okay? So another good thing to do, when it's your opponent's turn, do the goldfish technique, okay? What's defending what? Rooks are defending each other. Ignore the king. Very often you can ignore the rooks as well if you know that they're paired. But what you're looking for here is so these are all the defensive relationships, okay? I think. And what you're looking for is what's undefended. Well, I've highlighted the undefended knight. So this is interesting. So the bishop has moved from there to there. Okay, so why did my opponent make that move? I guess to defend f2. Maybe from the knight? I don't know. So is she worried about this? Possibly. Okay. So I'm down to under 3 minutes. So I think that this is a good move. I think that this improves my rook. Remember, we're in the middle game. We are lining up ideas. We are lining up potential attacks. We're not necessarily attacking. It's a forcing move because I'm attacking the undefended piece. But more than that, here, my rook, that was the scope of my rook. Okay? That was the limits of my rook's range there. Here, once the knight moves, now my rook is looking at f2, and that's what I think the purpose of that move was. Right, but it's kind of, I'm kind of bluffing as well a little bit, because actually my best idea is queen here, do something really aggressive with the knight, like attack a rook, yeah? But really my threat is queen takes g2, checkmate. Okay? And it's all thanks to this sneaky, quiet bishop that's just been sitting there saying his prayers in the corner. Now, what's she going to do? What's she going to do when they come for you? Can't get there, queen takes. Can't get there, pawn takes. That is no good because knight takes. Okay. Can't get there because I've got a choice of pawns. Aha! That's a good move. That is a good move. I like that. Well done. So, a lot of beginners, this is not a beginner move. A lot of beginners will go, my knight's under attack, therefore I have to move my knight. No, you don't. Okay? When you have a piece under attack, you have many, many options. Okay? One of them is to move the piece out of danger. Yeah. Another, you can capture the attacker. Another, you can allow the piece to be captured. Sometimes that's the right thing. So, anyway, I'm down to 2 minutes. So what am I going to do? I'm kind of inclined to take the knight, let her take, and then move the rook back. Reason is because this is an important pawn. This is a defensive pawn, right? I don't have a dark squared bishop, which is a shame because king and queen are on the same dark square diagonal. So, yeah, and one other option when you've got a piece under attack is a counter-attack. And that's what she's doing here. So she's attacking the knight now twice. The knight is defended only once. So I also have the option of like queen c6. Okay, would you have thought of that move, you know? Pawn takes, queen takes, defended by the bishop. Okay, but I've just lost a knight, haven't I? Which is dumb. Okay, let's take the knight. Let's just see what happens. Okay, so I'm preparing to move my rook back. I can't move my rook here if pawn takes knight because it would be undefended and the queen would take it. So I think rook back to f6 on the next move is very likely. And the clocks are ticking down now. We're both into our last 2 minutes or minute and a half, which means we're going to be depending on the 10-second increment. Haha. Now it feels actually a little bit like my rook's in the way, because now I'm thinking f pawn is the best pawn break. d6 to d5 isn't very appealing right now. This pawn is holding together my centre, and this just doesn't make sense. Or does it? I don't know. Bishop takes, but then I've got an isolated pawn there. So what I want to be doing, I think, is f5, f4. Keep my pawns on these dark squares, giving my bishop here, this guy, lots of scope. Okay, but she's down to 30 seconds now. I'm assuming pawn takes, and then rook goes back here. But I'm not going to pre-move. In general, the only moves that I ever pre-move are recaptures. Because, for example, you know, if I was going to recapture that, okay, I'm going to move back straight away. Let's say, you know, I have a piece here, pawn there. I know that the recapture is safe. I've already figured that out. I might pre-move the recapture. Because if my opponent doesn't capture, then I can't take my own piece. All right, so now, okay, the clock's ticking now. That pawn's undefended though. In it. And I'm attacking the knight. Might come here. Can't go there. Queen here. Options. Okay, she's down to 10 seconds. I think we're probably going to run out of time on this one. But very, very instructive, I think. Last second. And we're out of time. Good game, though. Good game. With some decent moves and some useful points, I hope. So if you're sub 1000, I think there'll be a lot of tips that you can get out of this game in particular. Well done to my opponent. Really did not play like a 200 rated player. Absolutely not. You know, it'll be, you know, if we were doing guess the elo, I would say I was playing like a 600. So, you know, I agree. I think she's definitely a better player than her rating, and work on the nerves. Use the checklist. All of us need to use the checklist. Really do. Yeah. So. Yeah. And that's it. That's it. So that's today's training game against the 268, who plays a lot better than that. And I think that if she gets control of that, you know, that mental side of the game, she's going to go shooting up the rankings. Good game. Thank you to my opponent. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to Chess Bootcamp if you haven't subscribed, and I will see you soon.